Just as our theme for this youth congress is pass it on, so this workshop has two components to it. When you say pass it on, you have to identify what is the it. If you're going to pass it on, what is it? What are you passing on? Once you know what it is, then you can say, what is the best way to pass it on? In a similar way, for this breakout session, this workshop, we have Generation Z reaching their hearts for Jesus, two components. Number one, what or who is Generation Z? Part two, how do you reach that group for Jesus? So we have two parts for this afternoon. What you have on the orange sheet is just a quick overview. Generation Z, there is not agreement, but it's based upon when a person is born. Some people will say it's from 1995 to 2010. If you were born during that time, you are part of Generation Z, whether you want to be part of it or not. Just like nobody asked you, would you like to be born? Nobody asked you, would you like to be part of Generation Z? You simply are. Now, some people say a generation needs to be 20 years. Well, if that's the case, that's why you have the second date up there, 1995 to 2015. It takes 20 years. There is some discussion about this, saying in the past, a generation did last for 20 years approximately. But now things have intensified to the point that instead of 20 years for a generation, it happens now in a shorter period of time, 15 years, 1995 to 2010. And those born after 2010 will be part of the next generation, whatever that is. Okay? Generation Z, some quick facts. This is right on your orange sheet, okay? Number one, right on your orange sheet. This is a large cohort for everyone. That is, there are lots of people in this age period. Lots, including you. Number two, is being a digital native automatically something you should do? Do you know what the term digital native means? It means that it's natural for you to be on your phone. It's natural for you to use your phone, not just to call, but to text, to use other social media platforms. That is normal for you. Is that a requirement to be part of Generation Z? You cannot live without your device. Number three, a strong entrepreneurial outlook describes what most of them have. Entrepreneurial might be too big of a word, but basically it means that you have a lot of initiative. You're going to try things yourself. I'll give a contrast. When people talk about the previous generation, Generation Y, or more commonly referred to as the millennials, one of the characteristics of that age group is they are anti-institution. They're against the established institutions that are in place. The way that relates to the church is if I'm part of the millennial generation, I'm automatically not liking the church. I would rather be part of something on a Sabbath afternoon or a Friday night that is not officially part of the church, rather than going into the church building. I'm anti-institution. That's the millennial. But for Gen Z, they're not so much anti-institution. They just think they have enough good ideas on their own. They don't fight the institution, they just create their own stuff. So they're not going to say, the church is terrible. They're just going to go start their own program whenever they want, wherever they want. And it may not be in your bulletin or on your website, they're just going to do it themselves. Most of them believe that professionally, they're going to start their own company. So they are very entrepreneurial. That's characteristic of Gen Z young people. The term bad does get associated with religion. It is so stuck that I just don't want to put on that kind of armor, okay? Are you one of the few people who stayed in church? I don't know why you did that. I chose to be alive, okay? How about this one? The answer for what is family, or what is marriage, or what is your gender, the answer for that isn't the same anymore. It used to be that the answer for marriage was one male, one female marriage. Family is a father and mother with 1.7 children. But now family might be a grandparent and a grandson and an unofficially adopted other person. Marriage might be two people of the same sex. So for this generation, the answers that have been used in the past may not be the same anymore. You might think they're the same, but a Gen Z person may be thinking of a different answer than you are. Well, if these are some of the characteristics, how do you reach them for Jesus? They are so strange and different, perhaps, from you. How do you reach them with your Jesus? This is still right off the orange sheet, but instead of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll use the indentation, A, B, C, D, E, all right? How to reach them. This is just a quick overview. Those of you that are just arriving, we have this half sheet just in the front center section, so you will not have it unless you're in there, or you can come to the front and help yourself on either wing. It's the orange half sheet. How to reach them for Jesus. Again, a quick overview. Each of these is a response to the 5 statements I already made. So response number 1, this is a large cohort for everyone, including you. Now, letter A, how do you reach them for Jesus? You can make a difference right now. I hope you feel hope from that. You can easily have a sense of feeling overwhelmed. I just want you to know you can make a difference. It might be big, but you can make a difference. Number 2, is being a digital native automatically a should? Should you be a digital native in order to reach this group? To reach them for Jesus, well, are you on social media? I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you are on some type of social media. Anybody? Oh, see, well, you're already doing it. Even though many of you are not part of Generation Z. If you're not, give it a try. Number 3, we said there's a strong entrepreneurial outlook. It describes what most of them have. Well, then our role to reach them for Jesus is to be an encouragement for what they can do for God. That can be your reliance. You can rely on encouraging them to take their entrepreneurial spirit and saying, here it is, God, take it and multiply it. We actually believe it will happen. And the idea that bad gets associated with religion, here's our response. Hey, why are you so negative all the time? Drop the negativity. Be positive. Let's move on from here, okay? Quit staying in the dumps. Quit staying in the cesspool. Quit staying in complaining. Be positive and move on. And we had the answer for what is family or what is marriage or gender. It's not the same. Well, our simplistic definitions need to be updated and taught. That means for most of us, we're going to have to ask for help from God because we have definitions that we are accustomed to and we're really not open to re-examining them. All right, so these 5 facts on how to reach Jesus for Jesus, how to reach him for Jesus, you have them. There are many other seminars going on right now. If you want this one, you got it. Feel free to move on and go to another seminar. If you want to go into it in more depth, stay here. All right? So this is a free option. If you've got it, take it and run. If you want more, stay here. All right? Okay, here we go. All right, Generation Z. Before I try to define it more, I have to give some qualifying statements. And what I mean by that is, I'm really not sure what I'm talking about. And anyone who says, let me tell you about Generation Z, just put on a filter right then and there, okay? Because it's all guesswork right now. That's like telling these newlyweds, you know what, I'm going to predict the date of the birth of your first child. Well, we haven't even had sex yet. That's okay. I'm spiritually gifted. I can figure this out. Oh, really? When someone says, let me tell you about Generation Z, all right? They don't know what they're talking about. So just kind of take it as a rough idea. Okay, here's one of my qualifying statements why I don't know what I'm talking about. Number one, I'm an American. I know that we have a history, including in the Adventist Church, of North Americans thinking they know everything and pushing it on the rest of the world. I want to say I'm sorry. I apologize for doing that myself. I apologize for those before me. I don't even speak English. I speak American. It's not the same. But those are my limitations. I want you to know that the term Gen Z is actually a marketing term. It is not something that comes from the church, it comes from the world of business. And the reason it's been developed is how can we make more money? We want to take a group and target them and sell more to that group. And so we want to know more about them so we can sell more to them. This is the reason for having a term called Generation Z. In the church, we may simply be adopting a business model, which may or may not be good. So I'm just giving you this as a warning. In fact, here's a question I have for you. To what extent does this affect the rest of the world? We're at a general conference gathering here, and I'm sharing with you something from North America. Who cares? Do you realize that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, North America comprises about 5% of the population of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? So my question for you is, why do you care about 5%? This may have nothing at all to do with where you live. This has a lot to do with where I live, but I'm part of 5% of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, I recognize that we are now living in a global neighborhood. So I can be in Tanzania, I can be in Russia, I can be in Guatemala, and I can be communicating with somebody in Los Angeles or somebody in Chicago, right? And so we can be connected in ways that even though geographically we are separated, some people say the earth has become flat. We're all living in the same neighborhood, even though we may be many, many kilometers separated. So you may be a long ways from North America, but you may be very integrated with North America and North America with you. You also need to know that when we talk about Gen Z, we are giving a broad and a general outlook. You might have somebody in your own family who fits this age category, but is nothing like the general population. So what I'm painting for you is a broad brushstroke, but individually, it might be very different. Are you clear on that? All right. And the dates for Generation Z are arbitrary. Somebody just said, let's start it in 1995. Well, what if I was born in December 1994? Oh, then you're not Gen Z. 1 month difference? Well, what if I'm born in February of 1995? Could I still be part of the millennial generation? It's like saying you come up to the border. I live in California. As you go south in California and come to the Mexico border, everything becomes Spanish for the language. Before you cross the border, you cross the border and then you find English signs. You go, Wait, what is it? Well, crossing the border is kind of arbitrary. We made a line there, and somebody wants to build a wall. Let it go. But those lines are arbitrary, okay? The same is true with this age category. Just because someone is born here does not automatically make them part of that age group. All right, now here's a difficult one, but it's an important one. Is this a generation or is it a stage of life? Let me try to differentiate that, and then I'm going to give you some quiz questions, okay? First of all, if Gen Z is a generation, then this is something unique about this group of people. If what we are talking about is a stage of life, this is the way all young people are whenever they happen to be born. It would be true for millennials, it'll be true for baby busters, it'll be for baby boomers. It's just something that happens during a stage of life. And you can expect that same stage to happen with Gen Z. Maybe I should give you these examples, okay? Here you have a graph that shows some of these generations done as 20-year blocks, okay? So this is called the Great Generation. The Great Generation. These are people who now, if they're still alive, are 80 years old or older. It's a small group because most of them are dead, all right? The next age group after them are the baby boomers, And those are people who are now 60 to 79 years of age. Oh, that's a big group. And I'm talking about North America. I'm talking specifically about the United States. Don't worry. Even though the baby boomers who were born after World War II are a big group of people, they're all going to die. And they've already started. Okay? So even though that's a large group, they're going to get smaller. How about the Gen X or the baby busters? They're not as large a group as the baby boomers. And the baby boomers refuse to give up first place. Baby boomers are human and naturally selfish. They've just taken it to a higher level. I'm a baby boomer, so I'm speaking about myself, okay? Gen Xers, baby busters are the ones who have to clean up the mess that baby boomers made. But you can see that Gen X is a smaller group than the baby boomers. Millennials, or Gen Y, is actually bigger than Gen X. But look at this. Gen Z is the biggest one, even bigger than the baby boomers. And remember, the baby boomers are starting to die. So that graph is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So Gen Z is going to be a very, very large group. They're going to be demanding attention the way the baby boomers used to. All right, so generation or stage of life. If you came of age, that is, you entered your adolescence or adulthood after 9/11, 2001, again, for Americans, this is an important date. That was when some airplanes went off course and crashed into the World Trade Centers in New York City. If you were born after that, is that a characteristic of every generation, or is that unique to this generation? If it's unique to this generation, then we will say that's a generational difference for Gen Z. But if every group goes through that, we'll just say it's a stage of life that everybody has, where there's a national catastrophe. So how many of you think that being born after 9/11, 2001 is unique to this generation? Most of you don't think so. How many of you think that every generation was born after 9/11? No, not every generation was born after 9/11, just Gen Z. So this is an example of something that is unique for this generation, okay? I can say I remember 9/11. A Gen Z person can't say I remember 9/11. They were born after that. So they have a different experience. Let me try another one, okay? How about this one? The onset of puberty. That is, something happens to you physically in your body where you're moving from childhood to adulthood. You are now someone who has become sexually energized. Is that something unique for Generation Z? Raise your hand if you think this is unique for Generation Z. Okay? How many of you think, no, that happens to every generation? You hit puberty. Okay. So keep in mind that this has happened to everybody else before. When it happens to Gen Z, they might think they're the first ones to experience this. But they're not. So when they experience it, you should be able to reflect back and say, I have an idea what they're going through. They may be doing it at a different time in world history, but everybody has had to deal with this at some point, right? How about another one? Television is available in your home. You're not excited. Is this something unique that just started with Generation Z? No. Is this something that has happened to every generation where, guess what? You can get a TV now. Is that surprising for every generation? No, it's not. So this is not true for Generation Z, but this would be true for the baby boomers. Okay, that was something unique for the baby boomer generation. And so we had sermons about the evils of television. That was special for that age group. But you usually don't hear sermons about that now unless the sermon is only for baby boomers. If you tell a Gen Z person, hey, I don't want you watching TV anymore, okay? Nothing but trash on TV. I never watched TV. TV is for my grandparents. That was a different generation. That's not something true for every generation. That is true for a previous generation. How about this one? Getting married. Is this something unique to Generation Z, or is this something that happens for everybody at some stage of life? How many say this is unique for Generation Z? No? How many say, no, every generation goes through this? Yeah. Now, it might be at a different stage of life. For example, when I was a young person, people got married around the age of 20, 21, 22 in North America. Now in North America, you don't get married till you're 27, 28, 29. But it's still happening, it's just happening later. Anti-establishment. We're against the establishment. Does that characterize Generation Z? Or is that something that every generation goes through a time of saying, we're against the system? How many say that's unique to Generation Z? We're anti-establishment. How many of you have ever been anti-establishment? Shame on you. How many of you say every generation goes through a time of being anti-establishment? Okay. If you're a baby boomer, this really characterized you. In fact, there was a time when the General Conference got a youth director who had to be younger than 30 years of age because you can't trust anybody under the age of 30. So the General Conference got a youth director who was young. He was like 28 years old. And that worked for 2 years, but then he turned 30. So you can't trust him anymore. Shocking to the baby boomers, they didn't see this coming. Each one of them eventually turned 30. And while they were anti-establishment, they became the establishment. Now what do? We're now going to overthrow ourselves? So they embraced the establishment and became the establishment, and they won't let anybody else have it. All right. I find that both millennials and Gen Z tend to not be anti-establishment. In fact, what they want to do is they want to have more options. So they will be pro-establishment, but they're not going to give the establishment everything. They're going to leverage everything that they can, including the establishment. Okay. I feel confident in saying when it comes to Generation Z, we won't really know until it's happened. So we can prognosticate now, but you're not going to know until it's going to happen, until it has happened. As Seventh-day Adventists, we live this all the time, don't we? When is Jesus returning? Well, let me tell you when, okay? I can tell you this much. It's going to be before the end of 2018, I mean. Whenever you set the date, you know you're going to be wrong. Go back and read Matthew 24 for the signs of Christ coming. There is one sign. When you see him in the air, he's here. Until then, it's just a guess. Gen Z, we're going to know all about them about 20 years from now. Right now, we're looking into a Christian crystal ball, making guesses about the future. Okay, we're predicting. It's fun to do that, but we're usually wrong. Okay. Wait, didn't we already cover this? Take your orange sheet again. I want you just to read the first word of each number. So number 1 would be this. Number 2 is. Number 3, a. Number 4, bad. So what I gave you, what you're holding in your hands is a bad answer. All right? Let's try the last words, 1 through 5. Number 1, the last word is you, should, so if somebody tells you, oh, I already know all about Gen Z, just read to them the first word of each line, okay? And then read them the last one. Well, what about reaching for Christ? How about letter A, B, C, D, E? What's the first word in A? You? Oh, I got this figured out. Oh, yeah? You're being too simplistic if this is it. Do we try one more? All right, we're going to try it. I'm going to try to shift gears, all right? I'm done with the orange sheet. I'm going to try a different approach to this. Are you with me? Here we go. Gen Z, some helpful statements for GYLC. Here we go. Number 1, go to them. That's called the incarnation, right? That's what Jesus did. He came to where we are. He came to earth. So if we're copying Jesus, we need to go to them. Sometimes we just want them to come to us at church. And I'm reversing that and saying, go to them. All right. But in church, that's my place of security. That's where I hang out. That's where I'm in control. Leave it. Leave your place of security. Leave your place of comfort. Leave your place of control and power and go to them. Well, then what? You're going to have to rely on God. At church, you may not be relying on God. All right, we're going to try something. I need you to stand up. All rise. I need you to move out to the aisles and towards the front. Are you serious? Oh, yeah, I'm serious. So go ahead and move. Come to the front. This is the way we do altar calls now. Come on out of the aisles. You're going to have to give up your seat, your place of comfort, your place of power, your place of serenity, your place of habit. Come on out to the aisles. Come towards the front. This is not just a stand. It's a come to Jesus moment. Keep coming. Is there one more while the organ softly plays? Those on the outside, move towards the middle, please. Come on in towards the middle. We have some alligators here that will eat you up. For those who are not willing to move, that's certainly your choice. However, you're not even doing the first step of how to reach Gen Z for Jesus. All right. This is going to take a little bit of intelligence. Not a lot, but a little bit. I'm confident you have it. I need for you to take one of your hands and put it above your head. It doesn't matter whether it's your left or your right, but raise it above your head. Next step, you need to raise either your thumb or your little finger, one or the other. It doesn't matter which one, but you choose one or the other, either the thumb or the little finger. Keep it up there. Now, I need you to find one other person, not two, but one other person who is holding up the same finger that you are. That is, if you have a little finger standing up, you find one other person with a little finger. If you have a thumb, find one other person holding up a thumb. You may have to move to find that person. You need just one other person, not two, but one. Once you have your partner, the two of you need to sit down. It's probably not the chair you were sitting in before. That's okay. Just don't steal from your fellow Christians, okay? Once you have your partner, sit down with your partner, If you cannot find somebody with the same appendage, come to the front and I will pair you up. We got a little finger here, we got a little finger here. There you go. Anybody else? Once you're sitting with your partner, you can let go. You don't have to, but you can. You will do something with your partner in just a moment, but what I want you to do is realize how difficult it was for you to stand up in a Christian setting and come forward with fellow Christians. If it's difficult for you to do this, how difficult will it be for you to leave the comfort of your church and go to where a Gen Z person is? Ah! This is a warm and caring environment. If you can't do this, oh dear, oh dear. Number one was go to them. Number two is yearn to connect. That is, you don't just introduce yourself to the person, you yearn to connect heart to heart. This is not fast. This is not dropping off a piece of literature and moving on. This is investing time and listening to the person. That's not very efficient. Neither was Jesus. When he was resurrected, he spent most of his first day walking with two people, Cleopas and we don't even know the name of the other person. That's how he spent his first day after his resurrection. Talk about inefficient. If I had been him, I would have gone to Pilate and Herod, Caiaphas, and Annas to start with. Then I would have been back to the Roman soldiers. Boo! But Jesus spent all day with these two other people. Would you do that with a Gen Z person? Only if you yearn to connect with them. So let's try it with our partner. You may or may not know this person. Right now, Gen Z are hyper-connected people. That is, they are connected with many people. It's not unusual to be connected with 200, 300, 500, even 1,000 people. But they're very lonely. Isn't it ironic to be connected with so many people and yet sense such loneliness? Well, it only makes sense. You can't be intimate with that many people. So the more people you're connected with, the more shallow your relationships will be. Okay. Please face your partner. If you need to move your chair, you can, or just turn in your chair, but face each other and find out which one of the two of you has a longer nose. You can stick it up nose to nose. You can use a finger to measure it. You can estimate which one of you two has a long nose, which one has a shorter nose. All right, if you're the long-nosed person, please raise your hand. I was going to say raise your nose, but don't bother. Just raise your hand. Okay, very good. Long-nosed person, you're going to go first. Short-nosed person, you're going to go second. All right? So here we go. I'm going to give you a statement, a question, open-ended statement. Long-nosed person, you answer it, and then I'll shout out, switch. And then the short-nosed person will answer the same question. We'll go on to a second one, and this time the short-nosed person will go first. And then I'll switch, and then the long-nosed person will do the same one. Okay, so we'll take turns answering the question, both of us. So long-nosed person, you're first. Here's the question. My name is blank, but people just call me, for example, my name is Stephen Wayne Case, but people just call me Steve or hey you. Long-nosed person, go ahead, share with your partner. Switch, short-nosed person, same question. Okay, we're moving on. Short-nosed person, you start on this one, all right? I live in, how would you finish that? Short-nosed person, go. And switch, long-nosed person, same question. And moving on, long-nosed person, you go first on the next one. I spend most of my time each day, how would you finish that? Long-nosed person, go. And switch, short-nosed person, same statement. Next statement, starting with a short-nosed person. One of my favorite foods is, short nose, go. And switch, long-nosed person. One of my favorite foods is, go. Okay, long-nosed person, you continue. Here's the next statement. The members of my family include, who's included in your family? Long-nosed person, go. Short-nosed person, same statement. The members of my family include. All right, get ready. We're going to go a little bit deeper, starting with the short-nosed person. Take us there. Here's your statement. 3 of my strengths are. Short-nosed person, how would you answer that for yourself? 3 of my strengths are. Short-nosed person, go. And switch, long-nosed person. What are 3 of your strengths? Go. All right. We just had 3 of your strengths. You can probably anticipate what the next one's going to be, right? So long-nosed person, you get to go deeper. You start. 3 of my weaknesses are. Long-nosed person, go. And switch. Short-nosed person, 3 of your weaknesses are. I have one more statement for you, and we'll start with the short-nosed person. Here it is. Jesus is most real to me when... Short-nosed person, how would you finish this statement? Jesus is most real to me when? Go ahead, short-nosed person. And switch. Long-nosed person, how would you answer it? Jesus is most real to me when? And time. Please focus your attention back here to the front for a moment. I'd ask you to turn and face your partner, but now please face the front. I know you were incredibly enwrapped by the words I was sharing with you, even though you were falling asleep. It wasn't until you started talking to one person, one-to-one, that you came back awake. I may be giving you the words of life, but you're asleep when I give them to you. Maybe what you ought to do is have more time at church talking with each other instead of just listening to one person talk about Jesus. That's how Gen Z will respond, because remember, they're highly connected but very lonely. We would have to believe that God's Holy Spirit is present not only in the person up front, but in each person in a chair. If that is true, then the Spirit just spoke about 500 times. If the Spirit can be in anybody besides the speaker up front. And we didn't start off talking about Jesus. We started off talking about ourselves. Because if we started off talking about Jesus, we would have used cliches on one another. And we would not have been real, and we would have never connected. I'm not saying you're best friends with the person next to you now, but raise your hand to the level that you connected with that person in these few minutes. Thank you for taking the risk. Thank you for taking the risk. Yeah, give yourselves a hand. Church is the body of Christ when it becomes community. Okay, so we've had go to them, we've had yearn to connect, and another thing to reach their hearts for Christ is to look for visuals. Look for visuals. Not talking, but visuals. Have you noticed up here in front how many video clips get shown? Have you noticed that when you interview somebody, the interviewer says about 5 words and it says, oh, and look at the video. Everything has to be visual now. For those of you who are into words, words are important. The Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year for the year 2015. Do you know the word of the year? Oxford Dictionary, here it is. An emoji. Laughing, tears of laughter. That was the word of the year. You saw the skit here. And with the skit, you get the text message up on the screen with a lot of emojis, right? In fact, it's hard for us to come up with words. This is not just something for Gen Z to be visual. There was a guy named Jesus who used object lessons that people could see and touch. In fact, isn't there a book? Christ's Object Lessons. And the first chapter deals with the parable of the sower who went out to sow. And as Jesus was speaking the parable, there were some farmers sowing seed right there in plain sight. Jesus used visuals 2,000 years ago. It's okay to use them now. What would be the object lessons that Jesus would use today? If you're a farmer, he would use a sower went out to sow. If you're not a farmer, you might need to choose some other visuals. Dialogue, what you just did with your partner, now is something that has to be taught. When these Gen Z young people graduate from college, one of the first things they will have to do when they are trained in their new job is to learn how to talk. Some of them that are already entering the workforce are finding they cannot work in customer service unless they can do it digitally. I cannot talk to you face to face, but I can text you. Will that work? If it doesn't, I have to start over. I have a college degree, but I don't know how to dialogue. I'm going to need coaching on how to do that. All right, with your partner, please sit back to back so you're not facing each other right now, okay? I don't want you to look at your partner right now. I want to give you a task without you looking at your partner. And what we'll do is we'll start with short-nosed person, okay? Short-nosed person, you're going to go first. And I want you to share 5 things you observed about your partner. For example, you are wearing orange. You have 4 eyes. What are 5 things you observed about your partner? Short-nosed person, go. Okay, stay back to back. Long-nosed person, your turn. 5 things you observed. Go, long-nosed person. All right, go ahead and turn around and face your partner. See how many you got right. Take a look. How many of you got at least 3 right? Anybody get 3 or more? How many got 0? Did anybody get 5? 5 out of 5. Oh my. Mainly females, a couple of males. All right. Okay, face your partner. Face your partner. We're going to try the same thing. We'll start with a long-nosed person. And instead of 5 things, we're only going to do 3. I want you to look in the eyes of your partner and tell your partner 3 character qualities that you see in them. Long-nosed person, go. And switch to the short-nosed person. Short-nosed person, 3 character qualities you see in this person you've just been talking with. Okay, and please face the front now. What you just did may be very difficult for a Gen Z person to do. You might have to coach them on how to do it. So we've said go to them. We've had yearn to connect. We've also had look for visuals. And now converse about life. Some people do not want to converse about spiritual things. You want to talk about spiritual things. I'm telling you, if you talk about life, the spiritual will come. If they're not ready to talk about life, if they're not ready to talk about the spiritual, that's okay. Talk about life and you're going to get spiritual. People want to be spiritual. They don't want to be religious. And what they mean by that is the spiritual is some kind of connection with the supernatural. The religious is tied to a building or a denomination or a set time. Spiritual is more fluid, like the Holy Spirit. It blows where it will. And you see the results, but you can't predict where it's coming from or where it's going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. Born of the Spirit. Okay. You can expect Gen Z will have a post-Christian worldview. That is, their view of reality does not take Christ into it. That is their normal orientation. Again, this is not true all over the world. There are some parts of the world where they are very Christian and very spiritual in their orientation. But I'm telling you that in North America, the orientation for the general public is post-Christian. Christ is not even part of our outlook or our expectation. You may have heard of this term, came out in 2005, 13 years ago. Moralistic, therapeutic deism. This is the religion of America right now. Denominations no longer mean much of anything in America. We have become a melting pot of religions so that this is the general outlook. 5 characteristics of moralistic therapeutic deism. I don't have time to go into them. Here they are. I'll just blurt them out. Number 1, God does exist. Number 2, he wants people to be nice and fair. He's kind of a Mr. Rogers God. The goal of life, be happy. Number 4, God is not involved. The technical term is deism, right? God's job is to fix our problems, but he's really not involved. And number 5, good people go to heaven. I wish I had more time to go into that, but I don't. This book came out in 2014, written by James White, not the husband of Ellen White. It came out in 2014. Okay, this guy is a Baptist, James Emery White. The Rise of the Nuns. This is not a Catholic book. That'd be N-U-N-S. The Rise of the Nuns, N-O-N-E-S, has to do with people when they mark on their census, what is your religious orientation? Are you Christian? Are you Hindu? Are you Muslim? Are you Baptist, Presbyterian, Adventist? None. My religious preference is none. I'm not an atheist. An atheist doesn't believe in God. I am a none. I don't care. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's go get some coffee. Decaf. I just don't care about religion anymore, so I'm certainly not going to go to your church. I'll give you 3 quick characteristics of the nones, okay? Number 1, they are secular. And what I mean by secular is you are on your own. God is not part of the picture. So when you start talking about God, this is not my world. It might be your world, but it's not my world. So talk to the hand right here, because I have no idea what you're talking about. This is not my world. I am on my own. Thank you very much, and I'm going to do the best that I can. That's my orientation as a secular person. I'm going to grab for all that I can. I'm going to be as good as I can, but I'm on my own. The sooner you realize that, the better off you're going to be. That's my orientation as a secular person. When it comes to religion or even spirituality, that is a private issue. You can have your spiritual life, but we're not going to talk about it, okay? There's no group discussion about this. Spiritual things are private, not public. What this means is there's no reason to go to church. You just need to have your own time. You're a Seventh-day Adventist? You think the day makes a difference? The only thing that matters is I have my private time on Tuesday afternoons. I'll call that my Sabbath. Notice that I'm the one who determines who Sabbath is. Of course, I am the God of my life. Because being secular, I don't have a God to tell me when Sabbath is. You may tell me that God says the 7th day is the Sabbath, blah, 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 blah. I don't even believe in a God, so that means nothing to me. We see this in America right now. Have you heard of the Me Too movement? Me Too, where ladies are saying, I have been sexually harassed for years, I've been sexually abused for years, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. Me too. Me too. Do you know who started this Me Too movement? You would think it would be the church for the immorality, for the loose sexuality. Guess where it came from, this accountability to be more sexually pure? Hollywood. The ones who have propagated it. Why hasn't the church said anything? Because church is now a private affair, and we have nothing to offer to the rest of the conversation. You may know that in America, we are a divided country right now, both because of what we are doing as well as what other countries are doing to us. We are divided, and there's a lot of lying and accusations going on. You would think the church would say, speak the truth in love. But the church isn't saying anything. In fact, the only thing the church would say is, as long as you're anti-abortion, we don't care what else you do. So who is calling people to be honest? Politicians. The media. Because the church is silent. We have gone private rather than public. And the last characteristic is pluralistic. Pluralistic. That is, everybody does their own thing. There is no ultimate truth. When you dialogue about life, you will end up talking about God. He invented it. And lastly, first things first. I'm just going to zip over this because I'm past my time. Tolerant. That is, Gen Z is very, very tolerant. They're tolerant of everything but intolerance. They're tolerant, but they lack discernment. And my question for you is tolerance good? You can talk about that a little bit later, okay? Lots of information, but we lack prioritizing skill. You can Google Generation Z. and in less than 4/10 of a second, you have 260 million responses. Lots of information. You may not even get to the second page. So without prioritizing, it is prioritized for you. And the people who have paid Google more end up on the first page. And that becomes your source of authority. And you think you're choosing for yourself. Lots of information, but I don't know how to prioritize. Who or what is the authority in your life? We're going to skip this. We're going to talk about many Christian denominations. What Christians do you know who aren't SDA? What people do you know who aren't Christians? What people do you know who aren't straight? Has God said anything about any of this? And the answer is lots. So now we get down to the nitty-gritty of first things first. Is Jesus your Savior? Is he your Lord? Both of these make a difference. If he's not either one, you are living in a different world. Okay, we'll finish with good news. Before you reach out to Gen Z, Jesus already did. You're simply joining him, okay? You're not taking Jesus to them. Jesus is already there. You might just need to point it out. So you're joining Jesus to reach Gen Z. The first things first has to do with wisdom. Proverbs 9:10 from the Voice translation, reverence for the eternal, the one true God, is the starting point or the beginning of wisdom. Okay, so here's the summary statement. Generation Z, reaching their hearts for Jesus. We have the GYLC here, don't we? That's the summary of it. Go to them, yearn to connect, look for visuals, converse about life, and first things first. That's how you reach Gen Z for Jesus. Okay, I'm told that we need to exit this place right away because they have to transform it into another place for our evening's late afternoon session. You have time for one more workshop that starts in about 5 minutes. I'm going to exit off to this side. If you want to chat with me, I'll be out there in the hallway. Thank you all very much.